This is the Solid Signal podcast, and the week is January 30th, 2023. Before I get started, I want to congratulate those two teams that are moving into the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is broadcasting on February 12th, 2023. And I want to bring up something. A lot of people think that the best way to get the Super Bowl this year is going to be streaming. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah, they're going to say that the Super Bowl's in 4K, but it won't be. It will be upsampled high definition, which means that the quality will not be any different than you can get from an over-the-air antenna. An over-the-air antenna is, in fact, the best way to get the Super Bowl because A, you get all that action about 8 seconds earlier than you would get it with streaming. B, it doesn't cost anything to do it other than the cost of the antenna. You may already have that. And remember, an antenna is a one-time expense. You get it once and it just pays for itself over and over again. And finally, antenna TV doesn't rely on things like network switches and fiber and things like that. It's never going to get over capacity. And trust me, the internet will crash for a lot of you when you try to stream the Super Bowl. This is just a prediction that I make every year, and every year it comes true. Don't rely on streaming for the Super Bowl. This game is important to you. Watch it on a TV antenna. You will get crystal clear reception, and it will not go out when all of your neighbors do. But that's really not the subject of this week's podcast, although, of course, I do hope that you shop for a TV antenna at solidsignal.com. The subject of this week's podcast is really all about the products that you don't realize that we carry at solidsignal.com. You might think of us as a company that really specializes in things like, over-the-air antennas. I just talked about that. Satellite TV, cell phones, things like that. So, yes, those are a lot of our big money makers. I'm not going to say they aren't. But when you look at the tens of thousands of parts at solidsignal.com and all the great services that our Signal Connect division can offer you, you're probably going to be amazed at some of the things that you're going to find. I'm going to highlight just three things. And believe me, these are not the only things that you will find when you shop at solidsignal.com. They're just three things that are likely to surprise you. First thing is EarTech headsets. Now, you should probably watch our YouTube channel because you're going to see a couple more videos and more content talking about EarTech in the coming week because I am working on it right now. As soon as I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go back to editing that video. I never thought that I would be incredibly excited about something like a headset. After all, my days in the broadcast industry are behind me, and I honestly didn't think that there was a whole lot of change that could be made to that kind of thing. But turns out I was wrong. Turns out that headsets today are lighter, they're wireless, they're easier, they work better, and EarTech leads the pack. You can get EarTech headsets at solidsignal.com, and no matter what you're doing, whether you're, Mike Ditka sitting there at the 50-yard line, or you want to be Mike Ditka anyway, and just trying to coach your local football team, or if you're trying to communicate with your employees in the warehouse, or even if you have some sort of a restaurant or something like that, you know that headsets are important. And the best ones, the most reliable ones, are from EarTech. Shop solidsignal.com for EarTech headsets. The second thing I want to talk about is Garmin. Now, if you're like me, you probably associated Garmin with, 20 years ago when everybody was getting a GPS for the first time and you had one of those kind of chunky ones with a little tiny screen that didn't really work very well and you didn't know if the data was up to date. And that's probably the last time you thought about Garmin. But the truth is the company is modern. The company carries the best products that you need today. Now, okay, we've all got GPS on our phone, but what about those folks in marine? I was amazed to find that Garmin carries marine smartwatches that do everything that you're going to need. You don't want to carry something like an Apple Watch onto a boat because it's not doing anything for you. Once you get out of the range where you can get cell reception, that thing is just, frankly, a boat anchor. And not a very good one because it's not super heavy. On the other hand, Garmin smartwatches will help you control all of the electronics on your boat. They'll link up to your fish finder. They'll link up to your weather and navigation equipment, and they'll allow you to get that information on your wrist when you need it. There are even cases where you could be piloting your boat using your watch, which I'm not sure that I would do all the time, but in the open water where, you don't have to necessarily be in the perfect lane, it could be fun. And it is probably something that's going to impress your friends. They will make you think that you're a James Bond villain. And I think that could be a lot of fun. The third thing I want to talk about real quickly is Klein Tools. Now, you probably know about Klein Tools. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are installers, and they live and die by Klein Tools. Why? Because Klein Tools are the best. They don't break when you're out there on a job site. If you're the kind of person who just buys a tool and puts it in the garage and leaves it, hey, more power to you, but you probably don't need a Klein tool. You might want one, but you probably don't need one. If you're out there and you're taking stuff out of your truck all the time and you're on customer sites all day long, you need a tool that isn't going to disappoint you. That's why you need Klein Tools. And you're going to find a lot more Klein Tools at solidsignal.com than you're going to find at your local home store or pretty much anywhere else. You're going to find them at the best price, and you're going to find them with fair and reasonable shipping and delivery times. And I encourage you to look at the great selection of Klein Tools, because you want to make sure you have a tool that really holds up to the rigors of what you're going to do with it. And I really should mention overall that if you haven't looked at solidsignal.com in a while, give it a try, because we're constantly adding parts. We've added thousands and thousands of parts, and we're constantly adding new ones. And you know where we get them? We get them from customer requests. When a customer asks for something and we don't have it, that's when we put our crack purchasing team into play. We have got some people on our purchasing team. I have to tell you, this is the best team that we have had in purchasing ever. They're out there constantly building great vendor relationships and pushing us forward. And I think it's an honor to work with each and every one of them, bringing new products to market for solidsignal.com and our Signal Connect subsidiary. So if you want something and you don't see it, ask. Call us at 888-233-7563 and ask for it. If we do not have it, we will try to get it for you. And always at a fair price, always with fair shipping, always with reasonable availability, and the best customer service in the industry. That's about it for the podcast this week. I hope that you had a good time. Like I said, shop at solidsignal.com. It pays my paycheck, and I sure do appreciate it. Also, leave me a like, a subscribe, a comment wherever you get this podcast. It makes me look good to my bosses. And tell your friends about the Solid Signal podcast. We are not the biggest podcast in the world. I know that. I'm no Joe Rogan. I don't reach bazillions of people every day, but I wish I did. And you know how people find the Solid Signal podcast? It's people like you who listen to it and they tell their friends. So help me out if you can, and I sure would appreciate it. That's it for the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with even more fun and games, and I'll talk to you soon.